As we have been recording all of our sessions. So good morning again. Today is the last day, boo-hoo, of the 10th Annual National Community College. And I am glad to see everyone. If you are not speaking, please turn your microphone on mute. Actually, I will probably go ahead and mute people because it's just as easy for me to do it on my end. Ask to mute. Today is the last day, and we have two presenters today. Well, we have one presenter officially. Michael Shank will be talking to us about his work, and then in the second session isn't so much of a formal session in that the last session I always like to leave for us to kind of have a roundtable discussion of how the seminar has been, what we want to do in the future, and so forth. So let me go through the slides I normally go to. This is the first one. Welcome. And we are now in the third weekend. The first weekend, you can see our speakers there. Ty, I think who's with us again this morning, spoke. Sharon, who was with us yesterday. I got an email from Sarah Bowman today. She can't make it from Sweden, but she's going to try to watch everything on the YouTube channel where things show up. Then that was last weekend. And I think Susan Cushman will probably be with us again today. And then this is today. And Holly Rosewood presented yesterday with Michael Lodenthal. And I learned a lot in both, but particularly the different groups. I mean, we hear about the groups, the Proud Boys and so forth. We hear about all these various groups that are involved in domestic terrorism, but getting a little bit of the background and getting a little bit of the strategies and understanding a little bit of the symbolism had not been anything that I'd really gone deep in. So I was really appreciative of kind of getting that background. And then Holly Rosewood actually showed us, I Am the Land, which was really what I was struck by. It was, I think we get a lot of hardship stories from Puerto Rico. I mean, Puerto Rico has suffered certainly because of hurricanes, among other things. It was nice to get kind of a uplifting story about nonviolent action and trying to maintain space for the turtles and maintain space for the beach. Just to show you this standard slide again, I'm going to turn on the live transcription in a minute. Once we get starting, we are using Zoom meetings. So if you haven't and you want to, please introduce yourself to each other. I always think that's a great idea. In the chat, you don't have to keep your camera on. It's always great to do it because I think it makes it easier for presenters and better for presenters. You have a name tag, consider putting in your pronouns. We will go 45 minutes, then we'll take 15 minutes, and that 15 minutes following the 45 minutes is really for Q&A if we need it. If not, it's a break, and then we'll go from there. So let me stop sharing, and we've got a few minutes. I'm going to stop in my show before I introduce Mike, just to kind of say hi to everyone. Let me turn on my live transcript. I've enabled that. Any observations from yesterday? Thoughts? Domestic terrorism, Puerto Rico. Go ahead, John. Yeah, please.
Yep. One of the things that I found interesting from the presentation yesterday that goes along with my own work is basically when I look at the El Paso massacre, 23 were killed and 23 were wounded. The very, very right-wing Republican resistance to calling it what it was. That is to say, this must have been a lone wolf, which our speaker talked about yesterday, or it had to be some mental issues, gaming or something like that, rather than calling it what the gentleman said he came to do. Is that he said, I came here to kill Mexicans. And I think that's something that's very scary to me, not only the incident that takes place, but the pushback against that.
Right.
And that takes place in, so, whether it be in Germany, whether it be in San Diego, whether it be, basically with Muslims in New Zealand. I think that's a very dangerous thing when you have that resistance and you don't challenge that resistance. So that was, very important for me to listen to that.
Great. Yeah, I think the challenging the resistance is a really important part. Sometimes we don't know how to do it, right? And I think getting a sense of what it is that we can do, even if it's on a kind of a micro level, is important for us to think about that. I mean, I live in an area where I haven't seen a lot of that, but I have friends who live in Charlottesville, for instance, who experienced what happened in Charlottesville, 2 years ago, and kind of responding to that. So,
well, some of the same things that are happening with El Paso happened in 1820, 1830. So it's almost chasing down the white supremacy and the race back. And the tropes that are used today are tropes of old. These are,
So any other thoughts from yesterday? Michael Lowenthal's presentation, looking at the story of in Puerto Rico about the efforts to, I guess it focuses on saving the turtle, but also maintaining the beach and kind of claiming the beach back. Any thoughts of that? Any other observations from yesterday? No, anything else? Good, John. Yeah, sure.
Well, I've been waiting and I don't see anybody jumping in.
No, go ahead.
Well, I think you said it yesterday, was the optimism. At least it was a good story. And I think the other story was mobilizing the people in the resistance effort that took place. I mean, you're going up against corporations and big money in Puerto Rico. And it was just wonderful to see how people mobilized that resistance, and finally they were successful.
Yeah. And what I found was really interesting about it was I'm always interested in the process of doing something like this. And that's why I was asking about the student from American University who kind of started it. And then all of a sudden things were changing. And then she went back and filmed it. It's like you've got to be in the kind of take advantage of these things, being in the moment kind of thing. And then you kind of then capture it for posterity, so forth. So, any other thoughts from yesterday? I see we're all, this is maybe is for Michael's benefit, and I'll introduce Michael on the benefit. We're from California. John Haas is from California. Ty Olson is in Ohio. Will Mule is in North Carolina. Tu Lin and Lena are in Maryland. Elizabeth is in Colorado. Jillian, I know, is in Virginia. Tia, are you in California? I think Tia's in California, right? I want to say she's at Santa Monica. Why do I think that? Okay. Alyssa and Katie. Katie, where are you today? Where are you physically?
In California.
California. And Alyssa, are you in California also?
Yes.
Okay. And is Jonathan, is he a student? These are all students of yours, John, right? No?
No.
Okay.
Katie Morgan, who's here, is one of my best students, a fantastic student.
Okay.
I'm also one of your students.
Yeah. I don't see any other of my students on there, so that's probably why.
Well, go shout out for Cerritos College and near outside of Los Angeles for bringing students here today. So let me go ahead, Mike. It's great to see you again. I haven't seen you in so long. Michael Schenk and I, a little bit of backstory. We started in the PhD program together. Michael finished, I didn't, but that's okay. But Michael's gone on to do great things, and I think you're living in Vermont, right? Is that where you're now physically?
That's correct. Yep, that's where I'm at now.
Yeah, so I got a little bit of intro that I got off of his bio. He's the Director of Engagement at the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance, a group of international cities committed to achieving aggressive long-term carbon reduction goals. Michael's professional career includes leading press and policy shops at the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, Climate Nexus, clients including United Nations, Vatican City, White House, Congress, Friends Committee on National Legislation. Actually, I used to, years ago, I'd bring people from the Friends Committee National Legislation to this seminar every year. And I don't know why I stopped doing it. I should do it again because they're a great organization. Institute for Economics and Peace, actually, they presented Michael last weekend. Michael Collins presented. I always have them come. Biodiversity Northwest, and some other things. And of course, we are a lot of George Mason. Michael has a PhD from the Carter School for Peace and Conflict Resolution, and he focused on climate conflict. He's also an adjunct. You're still an adjunct at NYU,
Yep.
Center for Global Affairs. And are you adjuncting at the Carter School? Looks like you are. I don't. Are you still?
Yes, this fall I'm teaching a writing class.
Oh, excellent. Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Very cool. Okay. All right, I'm gonna leave it there. Mike can talk more about himself if he wishes. Mike, you have the next, 45 minutes, but you can have more than that. If we get into questions, then we can add another 15 minutes if it's Q&A. So I'm just gonna turn it over to you.
Great, David.
Everybody can put their mics off, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, thanks, David. Greetings, everyone. It's nice to be with you. And I trust everyone can hear me. Yes, that's a positive. Awesome. Good. It's great to be with you. And yes to mics off, but I'm actually going to encourage mics on because I'd love to get a quick sense from all of you, a couple things. I have a sense of where you are at in terms of which college, which school, which campus, etc. But I'd love to get a quick sense of where your colleges and campuses are at in the climate space, because that's what we're going to talk about. I'm working with cities full time, but I also teach, as David mentioned. So I often consult colleges as they think about greening their campuses and curricula. And so in Vermont, I've coached Middlebury College as an example, and consulted them as they're thinking about greening both campus and curriculum. And so I'd love to just get a sense of what you're tracking, what you're seeing on your campuses. If you're not seeing anything, that's okay. If you're not in this conversation at all, that's okay. But I'm just keen to get a quick sense from you all where your college campuses are at when it comes to climate action, because that's our conversation. So feel free to popcorn, feel free to just chime in and say which college you're at and what you see them doing or perhaps not doing. Anyone want to chime in? I'd love to hear from all of you.
I'm at Montgomery College in Rockville, Maryland, and I'm on the green team.
Nice.
I'm very proud of that.
Right on.
And when I joined about 2 years ago, I was really surprised to see how much we are doing. I was really happy with that. So I think we're doing a lot. We could always do more. But you mentioned just now that you talk about sustainability or greening in the curriculum. And that was the latest thing that we were talking about, is how can we, like right now, every graduate has to have some kind of a course that has a global perspective on it. So we were thinking, why not add that sustainable label as well? Because I have a feeling there are so many courses that are already doing that. So I'd love to get a one-on-one with you later and talk about that.
Great. Yeah, let's do it. Thanks, Lena. Thanks for talking about Montgomery. Who else?
Hi, I'm Susan from Garden City, New York. I'm at Nassau Community College, Michael. There are a couple things going on at our college that are good, but we have a ways to go. So we have kind of, for recycling, we have the plastic and then regular waste. So I think that's an improvement on just, all in one basket. Then we also have solar charging for the electric cars. So we have that going. And those are a couple of positive things I've seen that have changed on our campus recently.
Awesome.
Last few years. Yeah.
Thanks, Susan. Appreciate that sharing.
Sure.
Who else? What's happening on your college campuses?
I can go. I'm Ty Olson. I'm at Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland, Ohio. Michael, I think we met years ago.
Yes.
Well, I think our paths have crossed a couple of times.
Indeed.
At Cuyahoga Community College, it's mixed, as it is for a lot of folks, right? I think that there is a lot of attention, had been a lot of attention on greening our college prior to the pandemic. And some of that has been put on the back burner for the time being. We have several faculty members as well as administrators that are actively providing programming and support to faculty who want to talk about sustainability in their classrooms And so the education piece is big and still present, but the actual like changing systems and adapting practices that are more green and sustainable, that is lacking. So my hope is that as we stabilize here and the pandemic is winding down, that there will be attention brought back to those areas. But right now, there's not a lot of attention. So
yeah, that is a trend across most institutions. The cities certainly felt it during COVID too, where a lot of our sustainability staff in cities were seconded to COVID response, and budgets were cut as a result. So I'm not surprised to hear the same happening across colleges and universities. Thanks, Ty. It's great to see you again, and shout out to Ohio, as born and raised Ohio boy, Cuyahoga in my heart always. So.
Mike, I think Tia just put in the chat, she's at Santa Monica College and she's observing recycling efforts. I don't know if Tia, could you say more than that?
Thanks, Tia, for that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't say more. It's my first semester with the college. So I'm still observing things.
In many ways, you're the perfect feedback loop on this, because what you're seeing in the first semester is illustrative of the story that's being told or not told. So I appreciate your early feedback from what you're seeing. Thanks for that. Thanks, Tia.
Thank you.
Who else? Anyone else want to reflect what they're seeing or what they're tracking across your college campuses? John?
I think our story at Cerritos College is pretty much the same story that Ty had talked about. I think several years ago, there were a lot of gardens that were out there. There was a lot more green. I was on sabbatical last year, so I wasn't around. There's all kinds of buildings that are going up at our school, but they're not green. So I don't see a lot happening right now, but that's just my perspective.
Yeah. Thanks, John, for that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll weigh in as other people are queuing or thinking about what to say. And I don't know if, David, you're tracking this as well, but David and I, as you mentioned, both come from George Mason's now named Carter School for Peace and Conflict Resolution, and we have yet to really fund teaching in environmental issues. So environmental conflict is something we should be on top of, and we haven't really invested in that space. That's changing slowly but surely, and by next year, I think next fall, we should have a professor, tenure track professor, up and running in the environmental conflict space, environmental peace building space. But that's long overdue, and glad to see the Carter School finally investing in that. As we think about curriculum around climate issues, environmental issues. Anyone else want to reflect what they're seeing? It's okay, we've got some good feedback already, and feel free to put it in text too. Yes, they did. Yeah. My undergrad alma mater, Tatsushi, I think, was responsible for that one. Yeah, it's great. He's an alum of the Carter School as well. Okay, so what I'd like to do is jump into a few slides to get the conversation going. Before I do that, let me just finalize who I am and who I represent. For the last 5 years, I've been working with cities. So my day job is with the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance. I put the link in chat. Our parent org is called the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, USDN. So that's 200 cities in North America working on sustainability issues, climate policy. So USDN is the mothership, and CNCA is an affiliate. So I work with global cities, USDN, again, the mothership, working with 200 plus cities in North America who are really advancing the climate agenda, climate policy, and climate action. So I've been doing that for the last 5 years. Prior to that, I did spend a lot of time in the climate space still, but with different nonprofits, one of which was Climate Nexus, which helps subnationals communicate and engage around climate policy better. And that's why I put the link into this President's Climate Commitment. And if your presidents haven't signed it, do check it out. So I think after everyone joined, I put the link. If you scroll up, you'll see a link that says secondnature.org/signatory-handbook/the commitments. Click on that, because if your president hasn't signed it, it's worth looking at. And there are 3 different, unfortunately, there's a lot of things to sign and they don't have to sign all of them, but over time they advanced their commitments. The first commitment, which I helped promote when I was at Climate Nexus back in the day, where I'm no longer, was a basic climate commitment for university presidents and college presidents. They advanced towards a more concrete carbon reduction commitment, which is the second commitment. And then the third really gets into resilience and even talks about issues of environmental justice, climate justice, and that kind of thing. I encourage your presidents to consider it if they haven't, because it is a way to not only participate in this national community, which I'll show in one of my slides. So there's kind of national camaraderie, there's a national cohort around this work, but it also begins to kind of benchmark and chronicle and document the work that that universities and college campuses are doing in this space. So I just want to flag that. Feel free to trickle up to your president if they haven't yet signed it. All right, so let's jump in. And again, if you haven't muted, please mute. What I love about PowerPoint in its advanced state is when you type in a word, obviously they bring up, there's a designer tab in PowerPoint for those of you who use it, know it. And I think I had college as a key word in here, and this is what they gave me. So here we are, graduating, we're celebrating, but this is the point of our talk today. So I want us to move beyond kind of the superficial showcasing of climate action. And, you know, a lot of universities like the big showy stuff. And this is University of California as an example. The stuff that's visible are the wind turbines, are the solar panels, are some of the waste and recycling that was mentioned previously. That's the highly visible stuff, and it's important. But when I think about the opportunity for climate action and climate policy at the college level, it goes beyond kind of the superficial showcasing of what we do or what we can do as a campus. Again, yes, solar panels are important. Yes, recycling's important. Yes, zero waste is important. All of that is important, but how do we go above and beyond this kind of showcasing of what we're doing, which isn't, I don't think, I wouldn't call it greenwashing, but there's some pomp and circumstance to it that is a distraction to the real work, which is kind of integration into what I talked about earlier, integration into the curriculum. So again, if your college campuses haven't pursued all that's possible in the kind of visible illustration of green activity and climate action, I encourage you to do it, because things like green roofs and solar panels are low-hanging fruit. And if you've got a roof that you haven't turned into a solar array, do so, because that's easy to do. We should all be doing it. If you've got wind capacity, pursue it. If you've got solar capacity, pursue it. If you've got green roof capacity, pursue it, because we should. But I want to move the conversation into a deeper dive in terms of how we bring about real systems change in these spaces, and that's where I want to take the conversation. This is just very quickly what we cover at Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance, and I want to lift this up because you'll see me drawing parallels between cities and college campuses because they're the same kind of ecosystems. Granted, college campuses and university campuses actually have more capacity to affect change because they're kind of an identified, closed ecosystem in a way that cities aren't. Yet, I'm going to be drawing parallels throughout. And I'm happy to, why don't I just check chat occasionally, but if you, great, thanks Jillian for these. If you flag something in chat while I'm talking and I haven't seen it and it's germane to what I'm saying or the slide I'm on, please just go off mute, weigh in, because I'd love to hear it if I'm not checking chat on the regular. So these first two here are obvious. How do we decarbonize our buildings? How do we power them with renewable energy? How do we decarbonize transport? How do we ensure it's powered by renewable energy? I'm assuming your college campuses are pursuing this, and if not, I'm guessing they're on track to do so. I'm guessing if you talk to your sustainability lead, if you have one, you know, they're clearly thinking about how to electrify your buildings, get them off gas, get them off oil, electrify them so we can power them with renewable energy. This is what our cities are thinking about and doing. It's not easy work. If you take a city like New York, they're a member of the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance. 1 million buildings need to be electrified. So that's a ton of work. That's their biggest carbon footprint in New York City. In Vermont, where I live, it's transportation. So right there, you've got buildings and transport needing to be electrified and needing to be powered with renewable energy. That is the city agenda, but that's also low-hanging fruit for colleges too. How do you electrify the buildings? How do you power them with renewables? How do you scale up heat pumps? Oftentimes they're, especially during COVID, during the supply chain, heat pumps are hard to find or they take months to get. And so that's a real issue that will soon become less of an issue as supply chains are back up and running. The really exciting stuff is less here for me and more here in the regenerative space and down here in the transformative governance space. And I'll just speak to that because I think colleges have an opportunity to lead here too. So when we think about regenerative systems and economies, this is all the stuff that colleges haven't yet pursued at scale. And what I'd love to, hopefully all of us can stay in conversation, in contact, because I'd love to hear what you're doing long term. I'd love to be in conversation with you. This isn't me, I'm not a consultant, so I'm not trying to promote consulting. I just really want to learn from what colleges are doing, because having worked with colleges in Vermont, there's a lot of exciting work to be had. And as a teacher, adjunct at NYU and GMU, I care a great deal about how we make our campuses more sustainable and how we really embed it within the systems. So it's not just token kind of greenwashing stuff. So embodied carbon, for those of you who haven't used that phrase, don't worry, because it's an esoteric concept and I don't like the phrase, but it's basically the carbon embodied in the built environment. So if I'm looking at my drywall in my office and I'm looking at the flooring and I'm looking at the ceiling and I'm looking at and thinking about the concrete and steel that's required in this building. As you build new buildings on your campus, think about where it's coming from. Is it reused? Is it low carbon? We haven't yet, cities haven't yet, and colleges certainly haven't yet prioritized this. So when you're about to build a new building, really ensuring that it's the greenest possible materials out there. And whether it's low carbon steel, low carbon concrete, reused, et cetera, that's really what embodied carbon gets into. Carbon drawdown, thinking of your campuses as this great opportunity to suck carbon from the atmosphere in the greening of the campus. That's an incredible opportunity to draw down carbon, making sure your tree canopies are mindful of that. And again, I'm guessing your engineers and your facilities types are mindful of it. They may not be trained up in it yet because that's still a new field for a lot of utilities staff and engineers on campus, et cetera. But there's a lot of best practice out there. And so I just encourage all of you, you're in different places in your departments, just even flagging it for your team, your facilities team, and say, hey, have you thought of this? Are you thinking about it? Are you tracking it? Are you benchmarking it? That kind of thing. Consumption-based emissions, huge opportunity here. As colleges think about the swag, all the clothing that is on campus, either worn by staff or sold as part of your sports events, et cetera. Where's the fabric coming from? Where's it being made? Where's it being shipped from? Are people paid a living wage? Thinking about the full scope of sustainability, social sustainability too, in terms of social, economic, environmental sustainability. I have yet to see schools really take this seriously, both in terms of the food they're serving in the cafeteria and the clothes they're selling at sports events. And I say that compassionately because even places like the UN, if you go to the United Nations and you go into their gift shop, their clothes are still made in sweatshops. And I have flagged that before, but UN, it's like, come on. If you're not able to walk the talk when it comes to sustainability in your apparel that you sell at your gift shop, don't expect anyone else to. And yet you've got the UN, UNDP and others, UNHCR, et cetera, talking about these issues around human rights labor and sweatshops, et cetera, and yet they're not able to walk the talk. So real opportunity here when it comes to consumption-based emissions, the food, the apparel, all of that, to slowly but surely walk the talk. And if you're interested in any assistance in this regenerative space, whether it's embodied carbon, carbon drawdown, nature-based solutions, consumption-based emissions, circular economy, email me, and I'll provide the email, or David can too. It's my name, Michael Shank. No periods, nothing, just Michael Shank at carbonneutralcities.org. An easier version is michaelshank@usdn.org, or you can do michael.shank@nyu.edu, you name it. But I say that because if you're interested in helping scale this up at any of your college campuses, let me know, because we've got a lot of resources in this space, like a how-to. Like, you want to think about embodied carbon on campus? What do I do? Where do I go? We've got a whole bunch of toolkits and resources that we've provided for cities that are easily replicable for college campuses. It's plug and play kind of stuff. Same with carbon drawdown, nature-based solutions, which the White House just prioritized out of COP27, consumption-based emissions. If you need food support, you know, like how do we cut our emissions in the cafeteria by 25%? We got you. We got support on all those fronts. So feel free to reach out. Now down here, a whole bunch of opportunities. Hopefully you can see my cursor. Transformative governance and carbon neutral districts. So carbon budgets and climate justice. I'm guessing your campuses are starting to talk, at least in some of your departments, about climate justice, environmental justice, racial justice. I'm certain racial justice, and if not, but hopefully climate justice and environmental justice. We've got a lot of resources there too. In the climate space, we know communities of color and low-income communities have been disproportionately impacted by fossil fuels and have and will continue to be, and so we need to prioritize that work, and our cities are doing that, and I'm keen to see and support any college campuses in this space. The carbon budget bit is interesting, and some of our cities, Oslo is one of our big leaders, but this is where college campuses could really integrate systems change too. What is a climate budget? What is a carbon budget? Basically, when cities or colleges commit to, let's say, carbon neutrality by 2040, or carbon neutrality by 2050, or net zero emissions by 2030, whatever their commitment is, that requires that they're going to have to scale down their emissions year on year. And so that's a budgeting process, basically. And so what cities have done, like Oslo, have said, okay, we need to budget how many emissions we can emit in a certain year, and then we need to determine which departments can emit what part of that puzzle. And then each department has a budget across the city. So every department in the city of Oslo has been allocated a budget so that the entire city of Oslo knows what they're emitting and year on year is scaling down those emissions. And so our climate team in Oslo has to meet with every single department as they determine their allocation and then ensure that any activities that that department chooses to do fits within that budget. It would be great to see a college campus commit to a carbon budget or a climate budget where every department is involved. It's a great education activity too, because you're including the sciences, social, hard sciences, physical sciences, arts, literature, all of it, economy, and all the departments have to be really mindful about the activities they're undertaking in a given year, and just ensure that the emissions associated with those activities fit within the university's budget. So that's that. And then lastly, these carbon neutral districts is probably the perfect analog to a college campus, because what we do with cities, let's say a city has an abandoned block, like a whole city block that's totally abandoned, or maybe it used to be a stadium or something, and the city has the opportunity to redesign that entire block. Well, what they do with these carbon neutral districts is build everything to be carbon neutral in its entire design. Rather than having to retrofit something or renovate something, the build is completely carbon neutral. And that too is a perfect ecosystem for teaching. So I think about educating the world and how to use college campuses to educate the world. You are, in a sense, potentially a carbon neutral district. You are an isolated ecosystem in which you can test and pilot any of this work. So I think I put this link in chat to this. If you want to explore it later, we're not going to dive into, and someone, if I can get everyone, I hear some background noise, if everyone can go on mute, that'd be great. Feel free to explore any of these links if you want to find out more, or follow up later with me if you want to find out more. We've already talked about this in terms of how green your campus is and what you're tracking, but I just want to flag these icons down here because while waste reduction is often top of mind for campuses that are newly greening, and renewable energy, again, is kind of the token pomp and circumstance. Again, it's important, but oftentimes you'll see kind of it's really to show, hey, look, we're committed to this stuff. You'll see solar on a campus roof. And again, that's low-hanging fruit. If your college hasn't done it, do it. But the real work is in facilities and educational opportunities. How to integrate sustainability into all the programming is the big lift. I mentioned Middlebury College because I do some work with them. That was the outstanding ask that wasn't fulfilled. So I recognize it's not easy. Middlebury is a carbon neutral campus. They've scaled up solar. You should go to their campus. They have a ton of solar. Even in Vermont, where we get a lot of sun, you wouldn't think, but we do. But the big lift they haven't yet figured out is how to integrate it in a cross-disciplinary way, in an intersectional way across departments. And that's, in my mind, the exciting work. This is from the city of New York. And these are all the ways in which they're thinking about sustainability across their campus. So what I love about this is just the full spectrum of what you're talking about here, because you're looking at food, you're looking at community engagement, water, energy, waste, recycling, etc., procurement. There's so many opportunities to green your campus in more than just the obvious ways, like electrifying your fleet. Whatever buses you're using for sports teams, are they electric? Can they be electric? Is e-mobility, micro-mobility a possibility across your campuses in terms of easy use of scooters, etc., e-bikes, all the things? Most of your campuses are probably walkable, so the pedestrian bit is covered. Is it safe walkability? Is it safe for pedestrians? So thinking about all the electrification that can happen in the transportation space, in the energy space for your buildings, but also in the dining. How green is it? How much plant-based opportunities are there? Where are you getting your food? In your procurement, in your continuing ed, community engagement, etc. So really exploring all the ways in which, and I'm happy to provide this link later, again, out of City of New York. This is the commitment I mentioned, the link I put in chat, secondnature.org, and this just gives you a sense of who has committed to the various agreements. So I mentioned 3 different agreements. Over here on the left, basic climate agreement, a more specific carbon reduction agreement, and then a resilience agreement. And hopefully you can see the colors, the kind of orange, black, and blue, in terms of which universities where, which colleges where have committed to those agreements and who has signed. So for those of you kind of on the East Coast, a lot of momentum here. But this is a cohort that you can definitely learn from and learn with as you green your campuses, and I encourage you to get involved if your college isn't. So what I'd like to just quickly tick through, because we talked about kind of the technical approaches in the previous slides, I'm now really interested in how do we mobilize change? How do we create a culture of activism on our campuses so that we're actually acting on these solutions? Because in the climate space, I've long been frustrated by the fact that we know what the solutions are. We know what to do to lower our emissions dramatically in 5-10 years. The problem is the political will and the public will just often isn't there. And so I think a lot, in my role as director of engagement, how do we build that public and political will? Because your campus could be one of the greenest campuses out there, and yet maybe people just aren't mindful or they're not engaged. And this is the critical work in my mind, because again, we know what the solutions are from a technical perspective, but getting people mobilized around that is really the work. What you're looking at here is not mine. I didn't create these, and it's going to be familiar to those of you who have taught in sociology before, or even in the conflict space, peacebuilding space. This is out of Ideas 42. It's a think tank in Boston that my friend Josh used to run, and Ideas 42, it's just ideas, the number 4, the number 2.org, and you'll find their work there. I really like their work. So I overlay Ideas 42 with this model out of Stanford, which thinks about behavior change. And as you see here, if we think about this from a climate perspective, when I think about climate action and climate policy, our work with cities, our work with college campuses, how do we make this work easy for people? Because it needs to be easy. It needs to fit within their routine. It needs to be cheap. Can't take too much time. And so when we think about sustainability and climate action, it's got to be cheap, inexpensive. Can't take too much time, otherwise people won't do it. It's got to fit within their normal routines, otherwise people won't deviate. And then if we've teed up that as college campuses and as cities, then how do we trigger the behavior change? So if we've made it easy, if we've made it cheap, if we've fit within their routine, then what's the spark? What's the catalyst to get people actually engaged in the work? Because again, you could have the greenest campus, but if the students aren't mindful about it, aren't aware of it, if it's not integrated across campus, it's a lost opportunity. And so I think about this work a lot. How do we motivate people? How do we make it easy for people? And then what's the trigger? And increasingly in the motivation, I encourage my cities to not spend time on climate-related motivation or moral motivation or ethical motivation, and increasingly on basic human needs motivation. So how is life going to be better by making the switch to greener fill in the blank? What's the economic incentive? What's the health benefit? What's the security benefit? And a lot of my cities who lead in the climate space are reluctant to do that because they've been trained in the climate science space, environmental science space, and they think that's the card to play. And as we've seen in the United States, we could have all the climate data in the world and the climate science very apparent and agreed to by the scientific community, and yet we're not taking action like we should at the level we should. So when I think about motivation, I think a lot about how do we fit within people's basic human needs, thinking, especially post-COVID, where America is struggling, how do we make it incentivized for them in health ways, security ways, economic ways, etc. So this is what we're kind of going to think about here. And as I think about campaigns on campus, this is one of our members, London, that really made it visual for citizens, because some of you who have been tracking, if any of you have been tracking air pollution in London, people are dying quite often from the air pollution in London. It is a major public health crisis. And so the City of London, the greater authority, said, well, how do we raise awareness about this? How do we cause behavior change? How do we enact behavior change for people, for example, who are idling? So they created this whole campaign to get people to stop idling. And I just love the visuals here because I think in this space, we're going to have to think outside the box in terms of how we engage the public. So I just wanted to put that up as a quick example. So going back to Ideas 42, I'm going to tick through all of these very quickly and then lift up how our cities are tackling this. These 12 could all be major obstacles when it comes to behavior change, or they could be opportunities. And I want to lift up how our cities, again, so we can draw parallels to college campuses, how our cities are tackling this. Choice overload, we know this to be true, especially in the environmental space. If you poll any of your colleagues on the college campus, people are overwhelmed at what needs to be done and what can be done. And so feelings of inefficacy and impotence and like, I have no agency in this space. How am I, Michael Shank, gonna tackle climate change? So helping people sift through what's possible and not be overwhelmed with the myriad ways in which we need to tackle climate change is going to be key. Otherwise, people will feel overwhelmed and paralyzed as a result. And so what City of New York did, and I would encourage your campuses to do too, is created one website with this ask. Bringit.nyc was launched to get New Yorkers, New York City residents, to bring a reusable, sorry, this is a really big reusable, to bring reusables instead of single-use plastic. One website, which was a big commitment to launch Bringit.nyc for that sole purpose. I say that because as your college campuses think about ramping up climate action opportunities, if you offer a dozen ways to help the campus fight climate change, it can be potentially overwhelming for the campus and for people on the campus, for students, professors, staff, etc. Versus starting with one ask, making it simple, making it doable, making it concrete is an easier on-ramp for people. Like, okay, all right, I'm bringing my reusable now instead of buying single use. If you can get people doing one thing well, then they'll have confidence, agency, and they'll consider doing another thing well. So this is super important given choice overload in the environmental space, something to think about for college campuses. Cognitive depletion, we've already named some of it, post-COVID, certainly your students. I will tell you as a teacher, I've been teaching for nearly 10 years in different capacities, but at NYU and at GMU, my students, especially post-COVID, are stressed out. I mean, they were stressed out before and overwhelmed before, but now they definitely are. I'm getting like much more major complaints coming in terms of what's happening in their families, what's happening in their professional careers. Like the anxiety is greater than ever before. What Yokohama did, and so this is a picture of a partnership between Yokohama, which is one of our members, and Starbucks, in an effort to show that living well doesn't require a lot of energy. They had all these kind of community gatherings across the city in partnership with Starbucks. They had food, fellowship. You can see they're not using electricity. They've got candles, they've got music, they're having a good time. I say this because in the climate space, we can't be extractive in our work. We can't say, hey, I need you all to do this and that. I need you all to turn down your thermostat. I need you all to turn down your lights when you leave the building. Oftentimes the climate work is extractive, like I need you to do something, and it's not building community. And what I appreciated about this effort by Yokohama was that their priority was to build community. Again, thinking about basic human needs, thinking about COVID, thinking about how fractured we are, thinking about how isolated we are. When we do this work, are we building community? Are we bringing people together for food and fellowship and fun? That's as important as the climate ask. And oftentimes we deprioritize it in a transactional way and think extractively about what we need out of our community. Hassle factors, we have to make it easy. This is out of Helsinki. I love this so much because it's so much fun, but this is an easy way to deal with your waste in Helsinki. College campuses, again, now you're probably hooked up to kind of public sewer and public waste. But how do we make it easy for people to do something with their waste? And what Helsinki did is they centralized the system. These are suction tubes, and so paper, cartons, glass, I think there's food waste in there too. And you open up that lever and it suctions whatever it is you've got into a centralized system, and it distributes it accordingly. For bigger campuses, this might be possible, but again, how do we make it easy for people to make that behavior change that we want? Helsinki also created an app. I'd be curious if any of your college campuses have done this. I'm guessing so, but this would be an easy opportunity too. You could even have it as a classroom exercise. You could get one of your tech programs to develop an app for your campus. Like if you want to be green on your campus, if you want to pursue something sustainable in your campus and community, where do you go? What do you do? And just making it super easy for people to make the switch. And that's what Helsinki did here. Identity is important. And so, college campus pride, there are plenty of rankings out there that rank colleges by how green they are. I looked at all those rankings before joining you, and some of those rankings are legit, some are not. So I'm not suggesting that you adhere to the ranking competition. I am suggesting you think about, how do we build college pride around sustainability? Not adhering to the rankings, because some of those, again, aren't legit, some are. What our cities have done, and here's an example with Vancouver, they're one of our members, really trying to bake in pride. Like, we are the greenest. Now, of course, this created competition with other cities saying, no, sorry, we're actually the greenest. But thinking about campus pride, because that's real, sports teams understand that. How can we mirror some of that in the behavioral space with climate policy? Limited attention, we know our students especially, but also our faculty, but we know our students have very limited attention span. I find that attention span has diminished or decreased even more post-COVID. How do we present our work to our communities and our constituencies, in this case, faculty, staff, students, the college community generally, in a simple way? This is just an example. San Francisco's recycling page looks like this. So if you go to sfrecycles.org, this is what you'll see. And what I love about this is that, mindful that people are distracted, they don't want to see a lot of text, they do want to know where to go, they made it super simple. And I say that because a lot of climate language coming out of subnational actors, whether it's universities or cities, is overwhelmed with text. And as a result, it's a real barrier. It's a real obstacle for people to quickly take action. We want to make that on-ramp to behavior change as easy as possible. So, look at your college campus sustainability pages, your climate pages, and are they simple like this? Or are they crowded with too much text? Or perhaps a PDF, a 20-page, 100-page PDF, talking about the college's climate policy. People aren't going to read it. I get that that planning is important, and all our cities did it too. Way too many PDFs, 100-page PDFs across all our cities. Nobody reads that stuff. Yes, it's important from a planning perspective. No, it shouldn't be public-facing as your lead. And instead, how do we make the ask simple, which is what San Francisco did here. Loss aversion, we know people hate loss. And in fact, the pain from loss is greater than the pleasure from the gain of the same $100 bill. If you lose $100 or gain $100, the pain from that loss is greater than the gain. So how do we build attachment to that which might be lost as a way of inspiring behavior change? That was a bit circuitous, but I want to flag what Oslo did here and what your campuses could do too, in terms of building attachment to something that may be threatened by climate change as a way of getting people involved in the issue who might not otherwise be involved. And what Oslo did here is said, this is their climate page, climateoslo.no. They had this whole feature on these beautiful swimming gems, because people in Oslo love to swim. And they were attempting to build attachment to these swimming gems, because it was pre-existing, that attachment was, as a way of eventually raising awareness about the fact that these swimming gems are in jeopardy due to climate change and, in addition, agricultural runoff. And so it was a way to raise awareness rather than leading with agriculture as an unsustainable agenda in Norway because of all the fertilizers and phosphates and nitrates, because that's a pretty didactic approach. Like, hey, our ag isn't sustainable. Look at the phosphates and nitrates running off and killing our swimming gems. Versus like, don't you love these swimming gems? And then eventually getting to that which might jeopardize them. So again, it's building attachment because we hate loss of something as a way of raising awareness about climate. Primacy bias. So I was just in Australia for work because our members, we have Adelaide, Melbourne, and Sydney there. And I was at the Opera House in Sydney because it's gone green, it's carbon neutral, and they noted that they don't message anything that they're doing. If you go to the Opera House, you don't know that it's actually a carbon neutral opera house. And unfortunately, they're limited because it's a UNESCO heritage site. And I just came from there, so it's fresh top of mind. I was thinking, oh, I should advocate for UNESCO to change that, because think about the lost opportunity there in messaging to all these opera goers that the Opera House is green because the heritage site prohibits it. How do we showcase the yellow bird? I'm thinking the yellow bird is sustainability. Like, look at what we're doing. Isn't this amazing? Which is what Helsinki did. I remember the app that I mentioned. They put this front and center in all the public squares in Helsinki to say, hey, look at this. This is what we're doing. I say that because if your college campuses are going green in all the ways, do students know about it? Are they hearing about it? Are we mindful of our attraction to the yellowbird? What's the yellowbird on our campuses in ways that everyone is forced to see it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times because we need to see it that many times? Anyone who's been in a corporate space knows that with advertising and marketing, we have to see this stuff in all the ways, written, audio, visual, for us to actually remember it. And so thinking about, as we educate our community, our college community, are we mindful of this? Procrastination, we all procrastinate. What City of Boulder did, who's a member, they created these short videos. So they created these 1 to 2 minute videos of regular folks in Boulder doing all these things. Because if you look at all these things, especially electrifying heating and cooling, and to a lesser extent, energy efficiency and solar, a lot of people feel overwhelmed by that. You want me to electrify my heating? And what does that even mean? And when people feel overwhelmed by this, then they're not as likely to take action. And so what the City of Boulder did is create these short videos of regular folks taking action and showing how simple it was. Like, hey, I've seen these videos, so I know what I'm about to like emulate. But like, hey, I'm Larry. Yeah, we used to have gas, and here's where it was, and it went into my house like this, and now we ripped that out with a local contractor, and now we've got these heat pumps, and then here's how they work, and it's great, and life is better. I say all that too because we love stories, and our college campus is telling those stories so that people feel like it's something they can do too. They don't have to procrastinate in buying an EV or getting solar or making their building more energy efficient or electrifying their building for heating and cooling. How do we make it easy for folks, and how do we tell stories so that people are like, oh yeah, I can do that too. Text doesn't cut it. And Boulder realized that and created videos as a result. Social norming, we know this to be powerful in the behavior change space. What City of Sydney did is created this whole buildings competition and then was very public about who was winning. If you see this top left, upper left, they were very public about the buildings that were going green. KPMG, Brookfield, JLL, Lend-Lease. And that created, thanks to social norming, competition. We know that people who see their neighbors with solar are more likely to get solar themselves. We know that if you learn that your neighbor is saving money on their energy bill, you're more compelled to save money on your energy bill. So mindful of this incredible ecosystem that is the college campus, how do we really tap into the potential here around social norming so that we create this contagion effect so that people are like, oh, I want to do that too, especially in a college campus, not only the closed loop, the kind of the closed ecosystem, but at an age, especially for the student body, where social norming, perhaps it has even more impact than later in life. Status quo bias, we know people like to stay in their lane. What our city of Portland did, this is their climate work, but look at the messaging here. Again, thinking about basic human needs and not leading with climate data and climate science, not leading with a moral, ethical argument. Again, unless you're a religious campus, or you're talking to a religious community, I understand that's what you would lead with. As someone who grew up in the Amish Mennonite community, I get that. But for most of the public, appealing to basic human needs, how's life going to be better, is what I hope colleges are doing and what I'm encouraging our cities to do. And so this whole save more, live more is such an appealing ask. As we think about the easy on-ramp for behavior change, how's life going to be better? I think I have two more in this space. So availability heuristic. This was important when it came to climate change news coverage. For the longest time, most mainstream media, and my PhD was kind of in this space, so I'm mindful, I've done a lot of research in this space. Mainstream media would present the climate science and the climate data as kind of verdict still out, 50-50. It was this false balance where you've got the climate scientist, but then you've got the skeptic. They've since changed now to reflect the science, which 97, 98% of climate scientists, or all scientists out there, are recognizing that the world is warming and it's anthropogenic in nature. But back then, the news was presenting it as such, like, verdict still out. That's slowly changing and having a real impact on the viewership. But same thing here too. If your college campus isn't talking about what's happening in the solution space or isn't showing, then how do people know about it? And I want to offer this up. This is what Amsterdam, one of our members, has done. They've created this whole interactive site where you can post your own solutions. But they're trying to show what the city of Amsterdam is doing. This is what your neighbors are doing. This is how they're taking action. And there are all these posts with images and interaction about what the city residents are doing to go green in their own lives. So there's great opportunity here for your college campuses to create that same portal, that same space. It doesn't have to be online, but online's easy to do, where we're creating a community, again, thinking about the availability heuristic, where we're seeing, oh, here are some solutions. This is what we're doing locally. We're building a movement. People don't like to be in this space alone. It's very isolating to think about tackling climate change. So as we think about agency, both individual and community, it's a great opportunity to build support. Last one around planning. Oftentimes we think, oh yeah, we'll just take action on climate and it's going to be easy, point A to point B. It's never that way, of course. And again, so what some of our members are doing is offering up for very busy people. We're all busy. College campuses are no different. People are all busy, overwhelmed, taking way too many classes, or teaching way too many classes, creating a way in which anyone with any amount of time can take action. If you got 30 minutes in your day, here's how you can take action. If you got 5 minutes in your day, here's how you can take action. Anything to on-ramp so that we get people taking action. Because again, if they take one action, feel some confidence, then they're more likely to take another action and get more confidence and agency and empowerment, and then take another action. So really enabling an easy on-ramp there. All right, let me just stop sharing, just check in with folks and catch up on chat. So I'd love to just check in, and any responses that you were inclined to interject with and didn't, as I catch up on some of the chat stuff too.
You're sparking all kinds of ideas for me.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
One thought I had was one of the people on our green team is in charge of all the media and producing videos. And you made me think that what we should do is go around and catch people doing green things and like give them a big award. I mean, a reward or whatever, right? Like, wow, you brought in your reusable bottle. Do you know how much that has helped? Blah, blah, blah.
I love that, Lena. And I love your first comment about sparking ideas. I'm thrilled to hear that. One quick, easy thing, given, if I tracked all of your social media, what you like on Facebook, what you like on Instagram or LinkedIn, most likely it's fairly visual. There might be some animals involved. I mean, I have an animal sanctuary in Vermont, so I'm speaking of my own Instagram right there. But, it's highly visual. There might be some video. It's really likable. It's really shareable. And so how do we emulate that? Because that's what people are already tracking on social. And so, hey, everyone, this is Michael Shank. I'm down here at the cafeteria at Middlebury College, and I am thrilled to see more plant-based options. I've been a vegetarian forever. Thrilled to props, shout out to Middlebury College for making sure I got my, vegan tofu, whatever, that kind of thing. Simple, and then I post it. That was 15 seconds. I posted on social, and I rarely do selfies myself. And so people are like, oh, Shank just did a selfie. So they like it because I don't normally do selfies. Yes, there's a side benefit that's plant-based, but really emulating what's working already in really easy to use ways. I'm amazed. As an example, I did a shout out on LinkedIn because at COP27, where a lot of my friends are in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt at the UN climate talks, I can't tell you how many people have posted pictures of panels that are boring. I'm not getting the video from the panel. It's just a picture of a panel, like 4 people on a panel. Or they're standing in a row, like we were here in Egypt at COP26. That's it. Just like proud to be here or honored to be here at Sharm el-Sheikh. And I'm telling my friends, like, give me something real. Like, be at the cafeteria in Sharm el-Sheikh at COP27 and like, tell me what the food options are. Are they walking the talk? Or like, the built environment at Sharm el-Sheikh, did they choose low carbon materials? Like interview people, get involved, show me something interactive. Again, we already like that kind of stuff on TikTok and all the social media. How do we emulate it in this space? We've all got smartphones. It's easy to do. We don't have to edit the stuff. Just creating a much more dynamic story. Yeah. Other ideas, feedback. What's churning? Or examples. I mean, let's use this as a cohort too, something that you're already doing. You're like, hey, Shank, I wanted to flag. Sorry, there's a lot of Michaels out there, so people often just call me Shank, so I'm referring to myself as Shank there. But.
Michael, go ahead.
Sure, Lena, I'll be quick. So along the lines of what you were just sharing, Lena, so Tri-C has a couple of Tri-C being Cuyahoga Community College. That's our right? For those of you that don't know. We have a couple of programs that really spotlight people that are doing sustainability work. And so we have an annual award for faculty members that are integrating green curriculum, green aspects or sustainability into their curriculum. And that's something that's been around for maybe 5 or 6 years now. And then we also have kind of like a spotlight people doing green stuff, especially around Earth Month in April, where, people will get their photo tweeted by our marketing department with a little blurb about, what they're doing in the community or in the classroom or et cetera. And then we have a competition for students that takes place in April as well. A lot of our efforts are built around Earth Month, and there's a writing competition, there's a creative arts competition.
Nice. Love it.
There's a couple of other things, and there's a large gathering that we host where we spotlight the students' work as it relates to sustainability every year. And that's probably about 4 years old now. And it's been, not as up front and center the last couple of years, but even the last couple of years during COVID, we've done it virtually. And so those are a few creative ways that we've raised awareness and got people motivated to think about sustainability for themselves and what it looks like in their own lives. So
I love that, Ty. And a couple of things that Ty mentioned that capture, we don't have to think in a simplistic way about human psyche, but recognizing the ego is real. I was trying to speak delicately in my preface there, but ego is real and awards appeal to ego. Like, who doesn't want to be recognized? I think we all want to be recognized and respected for stuff we do. And so awards help with that. So awards are a great way to lift up what's working and what we want to continue to support in this space. I put a link in chat to City of Fort Collins because I've done some work with them over the years. What I'd love to see with that site is limited in a couple ways. Now, that site primarily quantifies what the community is doing, and individual action is a really important component of that site. But what I'd love to see ideally, and some of you have already mentioned this, is images and stories of people taking action. So it's an even more humanizing way, building a community online, especially post-COVID when we're still kind of isolated. I mean, yes, people are traveling again, but how do we build a community online of people taking action that taps into social norming, that builds that community of agency so that we don't feel alone in this space? And so it recognizes a lot of behavior change obstacles and tackles them accordingly. So it's an easy way to use online community building, just getting videos and stories up online. It's low-hanging fruit. It's not a big cost. I recognize probably many of your campuses are budget limited, and so how do we do some of this work in a light lift kind of way? And that's one way to do it. Yeah.
I'm going to quickly post links to the two things I mentioned as
Awesome.
well. So
that's great.
One is called Metamorphosis, which is our student competition.
Very nice.
Yeah, we've got about 5 more minutes for questions for Mike, so get your question in. I one of the things I want to comment, I think Mike realizes this, that community colleges represent about 40% of U.S. undergraduates, and they're not Middlebury College. Nothing wrong with Middlebury College.
Yeah.
Right? But we are kind of the great commons of America. We are democracies colleges. We are, where there's nothing else, there's a community college kind of thing. And the significance of this is so much more because of the position that community colleges play.
I couldn't agree more. And what we could do is tick through every area of focus that your community colleges are training up, and climate has an impact. I mean, if you think about the trades that some of your schools are investing in, like getting people trained, this is a big focus in Vermont. Our community colleges in Vermont are switching their focus with the trades because the opportunity in heat pump installation, for example, or
solar,
yeah.
The world of solar, right?
Totally. Totally. So that makes a ton of sense in terms of helping all our departments think about the opportunity there, the future there. But so too with any other, we could tick through any degree that your community colleges are focusing on, and sustainability has a role to play in that conversation. So mainstreaming it across our college departments is such low-hanging fruit. Again, whether it's economic focus or even philosophy or arts and literature, or the maths, any of that.
Yeah. I mean, solar in particular. I mean, we just got solar. We're getting solar in our house, and it's just you got to get in line now. I mean, it's busy right now, and they don't have enough solar professionals. They don't have enough people who can do it, and the demand is going to continue. So
That's
where
right.
are those people being? Those installers are being educated in community college, or they could conceivably be, educated there.
Yeah, that's right. Well, on behalf of, I don't know who I should speak on behalf of, but as a fellow educator, thank you for the good work you're doing across those campuses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's kind of wrap it up then. Mike, I know you've put a lot of information in the chat, and of course, we're recording all this. The chat is saved. I will share with everybody who's a presenter, everybody that's been here, so that you'd have a list, Mike, of everybody.
Great.
Mike, you have my contact information to share to me that I can also share to everybody directly. But any last comments from you?
Yeah, I'll just plug again. that anyone who's thinking about this with your college campus, and it sounds like there's a range of activity already happening across your campuses, which is awesome. But if any of the slides had a positive trigger for you and you were like, oh, we could consider that, or, oh, I'd love to know more. Again, if anyone wants to be in conversation with me, again, this is pro bono is a weird word to say, but I'm not looking for work. I am looking for good work to happen.
Yeah.
And so if anyone's like, well, how might we do this? Or Michael, can you take a look at our site and give your assessment of how we can improve it? I can do that very quickly. I love doing that. So if you've got a sustainability site for your college campus that you think needs an uplift or a makeover, and you're like, hey, Shank, what would you suggest here? Or we've got this campaign that we're about to launch. Could you review it and give us feedback? I would love to do any of that for anyone. So just give me a shout.
Well, and I think about like Lena over here. She's got a green team. You know, I think a lot of these little units that exist in all of these colleges, you know, you can be a resource to some of them too, I would imagine.
Yeah, we'd be happy to.
Yeah. Okay.
It's great to be with all of you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mike. A round of applause for Michael Shank.
Aw.
It's great to see you again, Michael.
Great to see you, David. Thanks for bringing me on.
Really important work. And it was a nice way of ending the seminar, because I think this is a very hopeful conversation. You know, one of the time, you know, sometimes we talk about climate, it's like, it's doom and gloom, right? And I know we need to talk doom and gloom sometime, but I'd rather talk about potential that we can be doing, and that's what you're doing, right?
Yeah. How's life going to be better? And
Exactly.
and I think that message is easy. I think we can manage it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Thanks again.
Mike. All
Take
right.
care, everyone.
So what we can do is, if it's okay with everybody, let's just transition right into the kind of the last session. It's 1:15. We can go to 2. We can go shorter than that, but we are now kind of ending the formal sessions. If people want to get up and take a break, that's fine. But at the end, I always like to have a conversation about, well, we could have the conversation specifically about this seminar, which is good. But I'm also, maybe because we've been doing this now 10 years, of the more existential question of why we are doing it. Should we, I mean, I don't know, maybe the question of should be, or how should we be doing this type of education for community colleges? What are pieces that we are missing? And before we get to that, because you can think about that, keep that in your mind while I kind of put this out to you also, is that, frankly, I continue to struggle with this seminar. I continue to struggle with, and I guess it's the promoting of it, the expanding of it, and just the putting it together, right? And the promoting of it is always a major haul for me and the Ford Center. We do a lot more promoting every year. We had 40, at the end of the day, we had 48 people registered, which was great, but that was 20 less than last year. Now, not all those 48 show up, as you can see. We tend to have about 15 every meeting. So it's the promoting, it's the putting together. All these things are important also. So thinking about that also. So thoughts on this, start anytime, maybe kind of the why we do it and why this is important. Just open your mics. I want to listen. I want to hear some of your ideas about this. I mean, obviously you're here because you think this is a priority, which I appreciate. But how do we make it a priority for more people then?
So David,
hi Jillian, nice to
see you. How you doing? So yeah, I think as long as we make it to be more student-centered, I know my school is definitely moving more towards that. We have all kinds of events, tons of professional development, and of course the students are invited to attend, but if we can get them more involved in these things, like I like the first session, the first day, when we had the students talk about, I think it was, I forget the
careers, yeah.
Talk about the international kind of experience, coming here and how things have worked out, and that was great. And I think was it last weekend we had another student. Now at the end he presented, so we didn't get a chance to finish he didn't get a chance to finish everything. So if we could have heard more from that student, but anyway, we just need to have more of the students involved and how they can be involved. I think that's important. So they need to they need to understand the value of it. I mean, I understand it, but to put it out there, like when I presented it to my student club members, how could I do that in more of a way where they can see the value in it?
I really do appreciate that comment. When we did this face to face, and until 3 years we wouldn't invite students, or if they came, they'd have to pay whatever the fee was, which was higher than $80. It was like $300, something like that. When we went virtual, one of the things that we decided was not to charge students at all. It just didn't make any sense, and to get as many students. And then actually the first year we did it, and I changed it last year and this year, is that I would have, like, students would be invited to Friday, but not to Saturday. Friday would be like student focused and Saturday would be faculty focused. And I found that there were some students who wanted to come to Saturday. And so I thought, well, why have the artificial wall there? But I do appreciate the fact that some of these sessions are like, students are not really, attracted to it. Others, the students are attracted to it. And we have some students here, maybe they're the best ones to tell us how they feel about that. I mean, Katie, you're a student of Dr. Haas's. I mean, what do you think about something like this?
I find it very informative, and I think just putting it out there to students, I feel like students don't know what they don't know. And putting it out there as an opportunity for them to learn something new, I think a lot of them would be engaged in it. I know I was when I heard about it, so.
Any other thoughts about picking on what Jillian said about making it more student focused? Why are we doing this? Maybe how do we expand it? I don't know. Take it anywhere you want to go. I mean, I have some other questions, but I kind of want you to tell me what you're thinking.
I feel like a lot of students are attracted to like where a lot of people come together. Like I would say a fair maybe. I feel like a lot of students would love to go to that, and they're able to like learn different things. Some people are able to like give ideas, and maybe like different booths, like each booth would give something beneficial to the students and help them learn or help other people learn something, and just give like tips on how we could promote this.
So you're talking about something, when you're talking about a booth, you're not talking about virtual, you're talking about something physical, like you could do on campus. Is that what you're talking about? Help me understand what you're thinking there.
Yeah, I was thinking more physical, like in person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that would be like more, like get a lot of interaction with students.
And I think you're right. I mean, for all the benefits of a Zoom interaction, which is great because we're getting people from West Coast, East Coast. I mean, I've got people from Long Island and I've got people from the greater Los Angeles area. I could not get that on campus at the same time, right? There's still something about being in the physical space that's valuable. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I think also like tying into what he talked about, like even including like stuff like this at sporting events, or like tying it to that because it's a direct impact of how we can make a difference, might be a good idea. And that's obviously something students are attracted to.
Okay, thank you. Any thoughts? Go ahead, Tulin.
Oh,
Tulin, you're on. Go ahead.
Is it Susan or me?
No, it's Tulin. Go ahead, Tulin.
I think it's invaluable, obviously, David, since I'm still attending, even though I'm retired, because I think it's very important to talk about peacebuilding. We live in an environment where there is a lot of anger, as one of the presenters yesterday talked about domestic terrorism. I think it's important on a personal and community level to focus on peacebuilding. It's an alternative to conflict, to anger, to terrorism. So I thank you for what you do every year.
Thanks, Tulin. Susan, you are going to say something.
Yeah, thanks, David. I just want to follow up on what Jillian was saying and the other students too. So I was thinking it might be really awesome if with your seminar in the future, if you maybe had like a student day, a day designated for student and student presentations. And I know this would involve more coordination for you and the organization and the Forge Center, but I know that I can easily bring another student next year. And I wonder how many other faculty here could bring students, not even just to watch, but to present something from their class, right? It is awfully empowering. And I was very sorry, Jillian, to have to interrupt. That was me. That was myself. I who had the situation where my student was doing beautifully, but we had another speaker coming on. So it was the kind of thing where I think we all three of us went over a bit. You know, I think I can turn it over to my student next year. I can just introduce the student. I can set it up differently, and maybe there could be even a little brief guideline for faculty who are nurturing students to give presentations, and then have like a student day. Student presentation day. It's just a thought.
You know, no, it's a great idea. I mean, I think a lot of in-person conferences will have like student sessions kind of thing, but we're doing this virtually. And also that begs another question of continuing to do it virtually. You know, I thought, well, do we go back to face-to-face in Washington? Do we keep it virtually? And I still like virtual for a lot of reasons. Face-to-face is wonderful, but this is an option for a lot of people. And the other has to do with the way we do it, and that it's 2 hours, you know, several days, right, kind of a thing. But student day, like that idea.
Yeah.
Other thoughts? John?
Yeah. I know I've been asked on many occasions to speak at Cerritos College and elsewhere about, you know, global education. And I was sharing with David that I spent my last year studying Gen Z. And one of the things that came out of the study of Gen Z is the real demand for education to provide students with vocations in the world. And what I see here, and what I really liked, and I had said this last time, is I just quickly jogged this down, but we had discussions of the Holocaust, climate change, terrorism, refugee. I think that fits in with the demands of Gen Z to make the world a better place. And I think that I would need to do more work to integrate the idea of peace, making, conflict resolution, conflict management with the events that are taking place around the world. As opposed, I know a lot of times I said, oh, I'm going to talk about peace. They're thinking of hippies and, you know, smoking a little weed or, you know, let's coexist, and not understanding how hard, you know, peace work is. But I think also when I do a presentation, I kind of go with the attitude, if I'm dealing with students, what's in it for them? You know, why does a student want to show up here? And I think that myself, to do more work among others, to understand that we really are competing in a global world. And the kind of attitude that I have for myself is that if I'm not preparing my students to compete in a global world, then I'm not really teaching my students. That world is not the baby boomer world anymore that I grew up in. So I think bringing these things, we say, oh, Gen Z really, they're interested in climate change and terrorism and refugees and all the things we talked about, but kind of showing them where peace work would fit within that, I think would be crucial.
So making sure we're making the vocational link for Gen Zers in particular, right? And
yeah, but I don't think that stuff is mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, they see it, oh, we did peace studies, or, you know, I made global competencies, or we're talking about peace work. Those are all interrelated as far as I'm concerned. And I think getting that across to students and understanding, we're trying to present to them, are you ready to compete in that global world? I didn't really compete in that global world. You know, you were American, you got out of high school, you were expecting to make this much money because you're American, that's it. You're competing with somebody in India right now.
Right.
Are you globally competent is what I'd ask the students. And if you're not, how do you think you're going to find success in this global world?
Yeah, thanks, John. Any other thoughts? How do we, I mean, we're a small community. I mean, that's okay. I mean, it's quality, not quantity. But I always, you know, I think about what else is out there, right? There are, and you may not be familiar with this, right? There are organizations like the Peace and Justice Studies Association, Michael Lodenthal is the executive director of. There's some academic groups that meet, something called the Midwest Institute that meets. There used to be conference in Ohio. I don't think Jen Batten's doing her conference anymore, Ty. I think that's gone away, right?
Yeah, I think, or at least it's on hold the last couple of years. So yeah.
And these were physical conferences people would go to. When we were doing it face to face, in the beginning, we were getting large numbers of faculty that were coming. I mean, large number, it was like 30, 40. And then towards the end, it was maybe between 15 and 20. It's expensive, right? Coming to Washington for 4 days is, it's going to be pricey. So that's why this is a better format. But see, we say this from, how do I get more people into the space kind of thing? Go ahead, John.
Well, one of the things I was thinking of, I just think this is such a blessing from you guys that I can bring my students here, and the price for me is not exorbitant, but it would almost be wonderful, like when you're trying to get people out to vote and you say, hey, I'm going to get 100 people to make sure that they go out and vote. I think giving these, uploading these, if you've done, be wonderful. I'd love to get the amount of people that watching this way up. Can I get 100 people to watch this? Or the next time I do a presentation on at school, can I give you in the Ford Center a shout out? If students thought this was a great thing, they're probably the greatest disseminators of information. Instead of having 14 people that showed up, it would be great to have thousands of people that would show up. But I take it as a challenge that I'll make it my duty to have 100 people watch this, or 1,000 people. And if everybody else did that, I think we could encourage it and get a lot of people watching the YouTube. I mean, it's great what you did, and you've uploaded these for the benefit of people.
Yeah, right. And the Ford Center, realize we're very small, not-for-profit, and we are a not-for-profit. I mean, what I'm charging, those of you who are faculty paid $80. That's just, and we're paying out honorarium to people who present, because I do believe in the value of people's time. So we have that to pay. We have a staff member at the Ford Center who's been doing a lot of that. That's Priscilla. You've probably gotten emails from her. We make a little tiny bit at the end, right? It's not a money-making thing. Other thoughts, please.
David, I just had another thought, David, and I'm going to mail it to you separately. It's a colleague of mine at SUNY Old Westbury. His name is Hugh Fox. He recently, for a program that I presented at Nassau, Deliberative Dialogue, it was actually for Constitution Day in September. I organized with a couple other SUNY colleges a really great program we were trying to bring in students, and Hugh kind of joined at the last hour, but he was an amazing help because he couldn't make the meetings, but he said, you know what? He directs sort of a first year class. I think it might be Intro to Civics or some kind of seminar that involves civic engagement. And I'm telling you, he brought several whole classes to the virtual table for my event. And it really put our numbers way up there. And he's just a really great team player. So I'd like to give you his information after I make sure it's okay, which I'm sure it would be. He's just a team player all around. And I think he might be able to bring some of his required, civic, these classes, these first year classes. See, I maybe made the error of making it extra credit. And sometimes when I require students to show up, I'll get you more numbers, and I can do that next year. This semester I was busy working with Ash and then busy with a couple other projects, so I didn't require it, but I can, and I think Hugh Fox would be a great contact for you. So
I mean you can use it any way you want to. I mean, one of the things that I've also struggled with is when to have it. We're starting at 12 noon, but it's because of John Haas are starting at 12 noon because it's 9:00 a.m. where John is, right? Yeah. And so, a lot of people say, why are you starting so late in the day? It's because we're in Washington, John's in Los Angeles, right? We've got to do it like that kind of a thing. And then the thought of, okay, it's Friday. I do Friday but every college is different, right? I know, but Friday is a light day for a lot of people. There might be some classes, there might be meetings, so it's better for faculty. I don't know if it's any better for students. And then there's Saturday. It's like, oh, Saturday. Should I be having it on Saturday? But then there are some faculty who would say, Saturday is the only time I could do anything like this anyhow. And I'm only asking for 2 hours at a time. So the other thing that is like when you want to bring students, obviously you can always just go look at it YouTube, but it's always good to be in the conversation, is trying to figure out the time of it. And you can't please everybody. That's the challenge, right? I don't know. What do you think of that? I mean, does that make sense? Starting it at noon? I mean, I could start it at 9 a.m., but that would be good for John Haas, unless he's up at 6.
I'm just getting back from the bar at that time. What do you...
But these, how about these 2 hour, the way we've been doing it, 2 hours? I mean, what I'm afraid of is I do not want to be in a Zoom meeting all day long. It would just drive me crazy. So I just did 2 hours at a time.
I like the way you broke it up. I mean, yesterday having the film, it's just a change of pace and having a little break in between and finding out what other people are doing. I think you're doing a fantastic job.
Mm-hmm. I agree, David. It's been good. These topics have been just fantastic, and they're definitely relatable to what I teach. But and I know we didn't have the State Department come on this go round, and so that was something else I was going to mention. I know I don't know if it was a year ago, so I went through some sort of training.
Yep.
And so that might be a way to get the students. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm.
Well, this is what's would be helpful. It falls on me. And Cindy Epperson helped a little bit this year. I think Cindy was in a couple sessions. She's now on the Ford Center board. And Cindy's former faculty at St. Louis Community College, taught sociology. So her and I were bantering out ideas about 2 months ago. But I would rather get it from you. I'd rather you come to me and say, I really liked this guy speaking last year. Can you do it again? Or I don't think that speaker really, it just didn't kind of resonate with us. I'm only seeing it through my own lens, and I'm using my context. Realize you all have contacts also, right? I mean, Susan's active in PJSA, Ty's active in the conflict resolution. I know that you got people also. It doesn't have to be for me. Everybody that I asked to present, except for one person, I had known in other ways, because there are people that I know, and I know people. I know that. I know, but so one of the things that I would look to you next year more to is to help build the program, right? And where do we start from, right? I mean, I had the State Department come every year, and I like them coming. The challenge is, Jillian, what they wanted to do virtually didn't seem to work well virtually, right? Because we used to visit the State Department in this program. I don't know if anybody here, and that worked out really well. So sometimes it's also the struggle of translating, because I do want experiential work. I was glad in every session and I think who did it? Sharon did it. I think that Susan did. Some people would like do something experiential. Let's stop for a minute. I want you to look at this, think about it, answer a question, do something. That's brilliant if we can do that more often. Other thoughts?
I have a few thoughts. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
I have a lot of different things racing around in my mind, so I'm just going to throw out a couple of things. The one is, I know that the Forge Center does webinars throughout the year, and I wonder if it would be like if there was a monthly 1 hour webinar that we could do that sort of builds every month during the semester, during the fall and spring semesters, and then sort of builds towards this, towards the Peacebuilding seminar. Just to raise some awareness, have it be a free and open thing that we can share with our students, share with other educators, and be planting the seeds, showing the value so that people already have a sense of what's going on. I know that's a lot to organize.
Well, you're going to help me. You're going to help me.
I would be more than willing to help.
That's it.
David.
That's what I love all ideas, but if all the ideas are like, David, you ought to do this, that doesn't mean I'm not going to try, but I want people to say, okay, I want to help you with this, then I'm in, right? But sure, no, I could see something like that, right? And once again, we're not, I mean, it's nice when we do our webinars now, we do these Forge Center conversations. Now, right now, they focus on humanitarian issues because that's tied to the Forge Center's greater mission. We don't charge for this stuff. It's like, and we pay honorarium people who speak, so it's a net loss for us, actually, but that's okay. Susan?
Go ahead. John was first. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, John.
I defer to you, Susan, please.
Oh, thank you, John. I just have a question, David. Would it be helpful to you if another institution hosted it, but it was still the Forge Center was front and center? Would that be?
I'm perfectly, partnership is good too. If another institute set up and we could have one other, that's what I used to do, realize. So the model was, we started with Montgomery College, we had it 1 year there, and it was too much for Montgomery College to handle, actually. So then I went to Northern Virginia Community College and did the Alexandria campus. And I had a dean just love this. He's still there. His name is Jimmy McClellan. And he had a staff person. See, the Montgomery College had no staff person to support the putting this together. And so we did it there for 4 years. And it was just fabulous. But then when the pandemic hit, well, before the pandemic hit, the staff person left Northern Virginia Community College. She left and went somewhere else, and then she wasn't replaced. I said, okay, she's not there. He's still there. He still wants it, but there's no staff person. So then I thought, well, let me go to George Mason University, which is where I'm teaching as an adjunct anyhow, and where I went, Michael went, all these people went, and they loved it. Challenge of George Mason was expense, because when you do it at an institution, we did physically at George Mason, first of all, they were charging in the registration like $1,000 just to do the registration. In other words, it was like they were, and then the food, right? I had to pick a menu, and it was a fortune, right? And no one was eating the food. It's like, and so I got to the point where this is crazy, and charging $300 and $400 a person, and it wasn't really making sense. So in a sense, the pandemic was a blessing because when the pandemic happened, I thought, wait a minute, this is crazy. Just do it through my NGO, the Forge Center, and simplify it all, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. It makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah.
But a partnership would be great. If you want to do it.
Well, I don't know that Nassau has the resources, but Adelphi probably does.
Maybe.
It's just a thought. And then the other, and I have to jump, unfortunately, because I have someone arriving any minute.
Yeah.
And it's been such a rich experience, and it's nice to meet everybody, including the students here today. David, another thought I had was, what about talking with Michael about being at PGA, having sort of a corner of PJSA where you're doing community college peace building? It might be a win-win. Many of us go to that conference anyway, and I know it's always a little tricky for you to figure out your timing around that PJSA. And from an expense standpoint, again, you're very reasonable and gracious.
Yeah. I'm willing to revisit that because we've tried that before and hasn't been successful, but I'm willing to revisit it.
Oh, okay.
And part of it is on the board, Ellen Lindeen. I don't know if you know Ellen.
I know Ellen, yeah.
Ellen taught full-time at community college in Illinois for 30 years. Oh. And so that's a possibility too. Yeah, I can talk to him about that. Yeah.
Okay, just a thought.
Let me go to John. You had an idea, John.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time. Are you interested in hearing about potential topics for next time?
Throw something out. You got a few minutes.
I've got two ideas.
Okay.
One of the things I've been looking at is Northern Ireland post Good Friday peace. And kind of a sobering fact, there are more suicides committed in the peace than there are during the time of the Irish Troubles. And so I think that's a good question to look at, sustainable peace, that people often talk about the Good Friday Peace Accords in 1998, but certain things with unemployment taking place. And, and the other thing is that I've had the opportunity to interview the best women peace builders in Northern Ireland. So I think it gives us a woman's perspective on peace building, but also the real challenges of sustaining that kind of peace. since 1998. And I've dealt with someone who's an expert on suicide in Northern Ireland, and just explaining what people are going through there. And young people just trying to, because they have nothing really going on in their life, romanticizing their parents. What they went through, they know that their parents made history, whether it's good or bad, it's history.
Yeah.
Since they have nothing going, they want to do that. Another thing, and it's just a thought, I'd be happy to kind of broadcast from the US-Mexican border on conflict, and share that and see what people are doing with conflict resolution, because there's a lot of violence on there, but there's a lot of people doing good peace work. I thought that might be interesting from, Juarez, El Paso kind of border there. So
and what I'm thinking, so that the Northern Ireland stuff sounds great too, but this on the border is that, could that be like a session, right? Rather than having a presentation, we're going to go talk to John Haas. John Haas is in Juarez. So your presentation is talking about what's going on. It's a different type of presentation, right? That intrigues me, doing something like that, right? And that could draw people, particularly. I mean, I also have to think about interests and demographics and population, and our Latinx population, is growing. And I mean, you're in California, obviously that's probably 80% of your students, I would think, at Cerritos. That may be more of an interest. So
sure.
Other thoughts so one of the things I'm getting here is, it is a year that we're going to do this again, but I don't want to start at a year. Susan has suggested maybe doing something in the more before that in Forage Center. But if I start planning earlier, right? And the other problem is that sometimes I plan later than I went to. But if I started planning late spring, I mean, I don't expect people to do anything this summer because I know your life. But in late spring, and I said, okay, could I get a committee out of you? Right. So if I got a committee of 3 or 4 people, and that committee was, first of all, generating ideas, different types of ideas, like what John is saying, or things that are experiential, topics, and then even a partnership, like what Susan is saying, right? So if I could find a college, university, and I always want to keep I don't mind going to Delphi, but I always want the focus to be community college. That's really important, I think, because that's the kind of the raison d'etre for me, why we do this, right?
It does. I just wanted to add, though, that I know that Adelphi does a lot of sort of bridge building between sort of the K through 12, closer to 12 pathway to college. And they do work with Nassau to some extent with pathways. So in fact, that's how I got connected to Adelphi. I gave a presentation on peace building and the importance of it to a high school. David, several high schools in the area came under the aegis of a human rights conference that Adelphi hosted for high school juniors or seniors. And it was it was a beautiful program that I don't know how I got connected with it, but I was able to present and then eventually land teaching there every fall. So I thought of them because I know they've got the Innovation Center. They've got a couple of extras that might provide, again, a little more infrastructure and support that you and all of us probably could use in planning a conference.
Sure.
But I understand how you've all been so supportive of community.
What I don't want to do is I don't want the partner to be a reason to raise the cost. That's the other thing that I'm really cognizant of. And maybe that wouldn't happen. It wouldn't be much, but I had a conversation with Priscilla, who's our administrative person, and I had talked about raising the cost. And she says, well, she kind of not talked me out of it, but said, what would be the reason for doing it? And you're right, I'm having a hard time. $80 seems to be like, I mean, I don't know, maybe a lot of you are running it through your professional development money, and you probably have a lot more to spend than $80. But even if you can't run it through that, putting out $80 is probably not going to break anybody's bank account for the most part. Other thoughts? Some people I'm not hearing from. Will, Julian, Elizabeth, some of the students that are here, Lena, about making this better, expanding the outreach. Lena, what do you think? I'm going to pick on Lena because I can do that.
I know, but I thought you always hear from me. Well, I thought after hearing from everybody that there seems to be a lot of interest to promote it and to help, and they want to get their students involved and have the students give presentations. My thought was, could you have a day or 2 days where the people who are teachers here today, you would be responsible for finding one presenter and one student to present. And you could fill up a whole day just with that.
Mm.
And students can get credit, right? Students get credit for presenting. It also gives them that professional experience of presenting.
I think it's along the lines of what Susan was saying. And we could issue them a certificate, right? I mean, the Forge Center could issue them something that showed that they presented. Maybe that would make a difference to students. I don't know. I like that idea. Susan, what do you think?
The idea of the certificate's a great idea. I think it's a really good idea. Yeah.
I agree, David. I also want to say that if you decide to form a committee, then I definitely would help with that. So you can just reach out to me. And also, as far as I think Ty put something in there in the chat about talking about the undergraduate, I guess, peace and conflict programs. Okay, yeah. So I think a few years ago you had someone that came on and talked about that. So then I will say, yeah, we could bring that up again, talk about the degree programs. I want to say there was a school that offered something for free. So we definitely need to talk about that again. And then have the students that are actually either in the program or graduated in the program. And then what are they doing? We need to talk more about the careers. So see, I could bring in our career and transfer department too. They will be interested in that too, because always trying to promote different career paths. And I bet you most students have never even heard of this, never even thought about something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, last year we had Michael Sonliner from Portland Community College talked about his program, which was one of the first peace and conflict programs in the country. And I do like to do that sometime, but that's assuming that people in this room, there are enough people who really want to come to this to learn how to develop a program. Well, Ty has a program, right? And I mean, Susan you said your human rights initiative, right? Your human rights program. I mean, I don't think that that's what everybody wants to do is start a program. So I'm often thinking about, what's the something that most people would be interested in coming to, right? But that's what a committee can do for me, Jill. So, I mean, I think if we form a committee, we can say, would this bring people? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry because I have to head off. I just put it in the chat.
Fine. Thanks, Susan.
I just want to say, you can always call on me, David. You've supported me in many ways, and I'd like to reciprocate. And if you have a committee forming, I'd love to join. Good. And the other thing I just put in the chat was if a certificate seems kind of ambitious, then maybe a digital badge is a good idea. Nassau is all about giving digital badges to students, something they can put on that goes on their transcript, like they took an applied learning course.
Yeah. Let me write that down. I've seen some of that. So that may be something I'll come back to talk to you about. Okay. Thanks,
For
Susan.
sure.
Thank you, Susan.
Bye,
it was
everybody.
really great seeing you again, Susan.
Same with you all. Great weekend, everybody.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Dave.
Yes,
David
Ty.
And everyone. I also have to jump off in 2 minutes. But I would be more than willing to put together a really short survey or evaluation, which would also include from this session, have it go out to everyone.
Yeah.
It would also maybe include some questions around suggestions for speakers, suggestions for, maybe shifting up the structure a little bit. Other suggestions for promoting it. And I can put that together and run it by you before we send it out to the group, if that would be helpful.
Wonderful, Ty. Thank you. And yes, if you want to do that, that would be wonderful, because I've struggled with that too, what to ask. And I'd rather, it's better to get more people thinking about what to ask. So yes, please. Okay,
great. I have to head off.
Thank you, Ty. Hope to see you all soon. Okay. Anybody else? We got a few minutes, or we can call it a season, I guess, or call it a program. Any other final thoughts, ideas about this? It was nice to see some people I haven't seen in a while, especially John Haas, who I have not seen. And I think the last time I saw John is when I visited him at Cerritos, which was about 15 years ago, I think, right? And John, you haven't aged a bit. 15 years, you look the same.
Yeah, I know you're lying.
but especially for bringing a few of his students here. And it's nice that Tulin comes every year. Tulin is a professor emerita now at Montgomery College. She's just a stalwart of this, so I appreciate her coming. I appreciate Will. Will is a member of the Forge Center. Will hasn't talked about his work, but Will's a PhD student at University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and they does some really interesting work. And hopefully I get Will to present on this work maybe next time around. And I see Jillian again, and the students who I been seeing. Elizabeth out in Colorado. Saw Elizabeth at, we hung out together at the ACR conference face to face in Orlando. The next ACR conference, let me tell you a couple things coming up just to let people know about things. The Association for Conflict Resolution, which is the largest national association conflict resolution practitioner, it's confirmed, Elizabeth, it's going to be at George Mason University next September, October. So it'll be in Washington, D.C. So that's an organization that Elizabeth and I are very involved in. If you want to come to that conference, that'll be at the Carter School at George Mason University. I'm going to be participating in the CCID conference, which is in Washington, Community Colleges for International Development, which I don't go to that conference all the time, but I'm going this year because it's in Washington, D.C. So that'll be in February. And I'm doing a session there on community colleges and peace building. The grand view, after having done this for 20 years, I'm kind of doing a retrospective. I'm not like I'm retiring or anything like that, but I'm just doing kind of a grand view of what's going on. The other organization I'm still involved in is PJSA. Did not go to the conference this year. I imagine that probably Ty went because it was in Ohio. I almost went, but that's another organization. That's kind of the extent. And then there's some other organization involved in, but they don't really relate to this. It's kind of the extent of the organizations that I'm involved in right now and going to see things. So I don't know, I might run into you at one of those conferences. Any final things anybody wants to share? Ideas, shout outs, announcements?
I would like to thank my students for showing up.
Right.
I'm very appreciative of that and the questions that they ask. It's an honor.
It's great. No, I'm glad for it too. I wish the students the best at Cerritos. I know you are in good hands with Dr. Haas, and I hope you go on to do great things, whatever it would be in the global field or peace building or social change or whatever. You are in a great spot to do that. Anything else anybody wants to add before we sign off? Tulin?
I want to work on reviving the peace and justice studies community at Montgomery College. So I wonder if I can rely on your and Lina's help in that venture.
Sure, of course. Whatever you want to do, Tulin, we are there for you. Montgomery College had I wouldn't say it's as vibrant as it used to be, probably because Tulin's retired. A vibrant peace and conflict community in Montgomery College. She actually taught a course. I know, Tulin, is anybody teaching your course in peace studies there anymore?
No, I'm going to work on that too, because I've been in contact with some people at the college. No one is teaching the course as far as I know right now, but that's also part of the effort.
Yeah, we Montgomery College has lost some, when Montgomery College, I'm getting some, Alonzo, when he passed away, Alonzo used to teach the human rights course, Alonzo Smith, great people retire, we lose them, and then the class goes away at the same time, which is really unfortunate.
A lot of people. Yeah. Like Eckert retired, I retired, Alonzo, we lost.
Yeah.
So,
any other thoughts? Got to help you. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, David, can you hear me?
Obi, yes, please.
Yes, I'm just listening very well. I don't know if you've thought of any relevance the people in the Global South could actually be to this discussion. So that's why I just kept quiet. So perhaps you could just think about it. And if there's anything, I'll be willing to be part of, and maybe we could just, continue the discussion from there.
Well, what you're suggesting is international, getting more international participation, and I am all for that. When we ran the face-to-face, there were years where half of the program were internationals. I used to work with, remember one year I was working with Johnson County Community College, who they used to have a peace study symposium every year that they did with Park University. I don't know if they still do it, but the person who ran it retired. but one year he brought like 7 Fulbright scholars to the program, and they were from sub-Saharan Africa, and it was like fabulous. So yeah, please. Any other thoughts, ideas? All right, well then we'll call it a seminar. Thank you all for being here again this year for
Thank
the 10th year.
Thank you.
Some of you have been here for many of those 10 years. Let's keep going. I am going to reach out in probably in the beginning of the year and form that committee. I'll go to everybody, and we'll kind of start from there and see what we can get more involvement, thinking more, and then Ty is going to work on evaluations, so he'll get that out to you. So thank you. I'll have a wonderful weekend, a wonderful day wherever you are. Thank you for spending the last 3 weekends with us together in this community, and wish you all the best for the end of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
All right, Tulum, we're going to have lunch still, okay? Call me when you want to have lunch. Call me when you want to have lunch. Okay. All right, I'm going to close it out.